like to introduce my compatriot and my 3D printing, Jedi master, Matt Greenberg. Matt, tell us a little bit about yourself.
So my first experience with a 3D printer was back in 2008. It was a horrible mess and an absolute nightmare. I was immediately hooked, as with all things are like that. My background is manufacturing engineering with a focus on materials. I am a CNC R&D machinist for Caterpillar. So we get to see some of the latest and the greatest, and we get to test some of the latest and the greatest, and then decide if it's really as great as it is. At this point, I was actually looking at this, that number is a much bigger number, but I'm not going to say how much bigger that number is right now on both of those. Needless to say, I've owned quite a few, and I've had my hands on quite a lot of machines, and seen some amazing things and some amazingly terrifying things.
Which is why I went to him when I decided to buy my 3D printer, and he gave me the advice that got me started. So my name's Anastasia Hunter. I've been volunteering for Comic-Con since the 90s at some point. And I came to 3D printing as part of the 501st Club. As you know, a lot of stormtroopers and a lot of times you'd be surprised. A lot of costumes now, instead of trying to find parts from other people, you can now find the parts yourself, find somebody who can print them for you. So I only started printing November of 2021. I actually bought the kit, which I cussed Matt out for an entire week as I had to put my printer together piece by piece for like a week. And it still wasn't working at the end of that week, and I had to come over and help me calibrate it. But a couple weeks ago, I bought my 5th printer, I think actually. I ordered it and it arrived in 2 days from the Czech Republic, and it was printing in 15 minutes. Woo! So there's a wide range of things that you can do with 3D printing, and I print droids. So you may have seen me with my IG 12 running around. He's 7 feet tall. He's completely 3D printed. Well, aside some of the rubber gadgets and metal holds.
We got the mouse right over here.
That's right. Also 3D printed.
Yep, everything's on 3D printed. We'll get into that later.
All right. Now this is going to always be my fun question. How many people in this room already have a 3D printer at home? Ooh, look at that. So look around. If we're not available, that means there's lots of other people that you can go to and ask questions, because we know that that's how a lot of this works out. Because you get started and there's always questions. And like, what kind of things does everybody like to print? How many people print cosplay stuff? A couple people. How many people print for work? Yeah, we got a couple people. How many people print, like helmets? Yeah, a couple more people. Yeah, not so much. How many people just print random stuff that they find online? Right? They're like, oh, that looks like a really cool file. I'm just gonna go and figure out and see if that works. Right. So there is a lot of reasons to print, and that's what part of the fun is. And there's new files coming out all the time in so many different places. And so if you can think it, chances are it's out there. I think my favorite thing that I've found is online replacement IKEA parts. For when your IKEA furniture dies, you can actually go and print a replacement now. It's like, wow, somebody already thought of that.
So currently, on the consumer market, there are 2 types of 3D printers. There are the SLA resin type that use the liquid, and there are the filament types. There's a new one slowly starting to make it down, but we're not going to cover it, just for the simple fact that it's economically not easily done, and it's not as safe as we would like it to be.
Powder printing.
Yeah, the powder printing. Powder printing is rad. There's like no waste in it. It's so cool, but it's so carcinogenic that, again, we're not going to talk about it. The benefit of filament printing is it's very common. As of today, there are over 50 unique materials that you can print in. I could not begin to list them all for you, unfortunately. Please don't ask me to. It's a little bit less detailed than resin, and it's a little bit slower, but it gives you access to, again, a lot more materials and more dynamic, can't think of the word here. Your ability to make more things is easier. You can make them bigger. Your costs end up being lower.
Economies of scale.
The economies of scale work a lot better on it. know, if you buy a big printer, you can print small things on it and you don't feel bad about it. Resin printing, on the other hand, the printer's gonna be a little bit cheaper, you get a lot higher detail, there's a lot more post-processing, and the nickel and dime effect on it is a lot higher, as well as the safety concerns there. But you can get some amazing detailed parts, as you can see right there. Hold on, I actually have that right here. Have you seen this? You haven't seen this yet. Hold on.
But when you don't want to have to sand that part to make it look really nice, resin printing is definitely the place to go.
I'm very kind. I brought a magnifying glass. No, really, you'll see.
Oh my gosh, it truly is itty bitty 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 teeny tiny bitty, like, oh, my thumb or finger basically blocks it out. But you can do that in resin printing. That's definitely not something you can do with filament print. So, things to consider. But like I said, post-processing, I could not buy a resin printer until I could put it outside in the garage, because it's gonna make a mess. Looking at all those commercials with people, having it on their desktop, you're like, ha ha ha, that's gonna be terrible later, trying to clean that all up. It definitely is a place where it's better to have a workshop. It doesn't necessarily stink or have other issues, but drippy things get drippy everywhere.
The consistency of the liquid is just viscous enough that when you drop something, it bloops everywhere.
Yes, which is good and bad. But as you heard from Matt has been there kind of from the beginning of what we consider now to be hobbyist, semi-pro, commercially available 3D printers. And this is what they are.
So the one on the left here, this is actually a really important printer. Everyone should, I don't want to say burn it to your brains. This is Darwin. Darwin came into existence back in 2007 from planning back as far as 2004 when the RepRap project started. 3D printing is not, everyone thinks it's been the last 20 years. It's not. 3D printing, like a lot of great things from the 80s, came around then. So it's, I think resin has been around for 40 years and filament's been around for almost 30 now. But the RepRap project, the idea was we're gonna make a machine that can make other machines, but we're gonna make sure everyone has access to all the tools and materials. We're gonna tell you what motors we're using, what electronics, the code, the materials. There will be no hidden mystery. We will let you know everything that needs to be known to make one of these.
It was all open source for the people who are more familiar with that term. And the beauty of that was because once it fell out of copyright, and trademark, then other people could pick it up and run with it. Because especially our European brethren absolutely believe in, hey, let's build it better, faster, and share the technology among all the other builders. And that's really what's been able to make it as cheap and as effective and as, such good prints as we can get out of it today.
Yes.
So, what's the name of that one?
So the other one, that is a Delta, that was actually invented partially to improve circular motion in terms of, if you're making a cylinder, it makes it a little bit easier. But it was also created to get around copyrights, because all the copyrights were based around Cartesian motion. Where are our math students at? Anyone? Okay, so Cartesian is where you have your x-axis and your y-axis and your z-axis. Because this machine is using 3 axes all at the same time, it technically does not fall into this normal Cartesian coordinate system. So it was kind of a way for them to be like, hey, we're gonna get around all these other patents by making our own crazy motion system.
And it also allowed for much taller prints that you would normally get from standard 3D machines. And that's also a number of the challenges that you face. It's like, I have to cut this tall part into how many little bitty parts and put them all together and make Loki's staff and have glorious purpose and take over the world. Right. So as to the tech, if you want to get started into 3D printing, we've tried to simplify it as to the basic things you would need to have at home, which is obviously a computer and
slicing, modeling software, and you really don't even need to own a printer. You just need to have access to one. And I feel it's important to say because everyone's like, oh man, I have to go out and I have to go buy a 3D printer, or buy a second 3D printer, or a third 3D printer. But it's not really required. You can actually do a lot of work without one.
but we're pretending that they're gonna go out and do that.
Oh, you're absolutely, totally gonna do that.
Okay. But the slicer software is what actually changes the model, like that you would see in 3D, the AutoCAD model, into a layer by layer file that the printers can read and then reproduce. And so you have to have that conversion software. And because the slicer programs are now so advanced, some of them actually allow you to change size, change, which is really nice when you're building a helmet and suddenly realize it doesn't fit, and you just spent how much time building it, and what's the purpose of that? So it makes it really nice to have all of those functional things.
Yeah, the slicers, some of the newer slicer software packages now are almost model design in themselves, with the amount of power they have.
Yes, they can do all kinds of fun things. In fact, we could just talk about slicer programs and spend an entire hour on that, but that's not what we're here for. We want to get you guys printing. So where do you find those files?
So there's a number of STL repositories. Most of them are free. I like the fact that all the cameras are coming out right now. So there's printables and Thingiverse are two of the older ones. The RPF, the replica pop form, has a lot of sources as well. My Mini Factory and Colts 3D, you start going into the more the files are paid, you have to pay for them. And most are pretty reasonably priced. There's Etsy, Shapeways, and there's another one called Materialize, because we all love to have punny names for our companies. They specialize in doing unique, unusual materials. If you go through Shapeways or Materialize, the question is not how much will it cost, it's how much do you want to spend. They will do metal for you on request. They'll do unique polymers for you. Materialize is actually who Disney tends to go through for all their work now.
Oh, interesting.
They use it a lot for Wakanda Forever.
And then like one of the things I don't have on here, but if like you wanted to build your own droid, astromech.net has a number of files that you can get through their club forum when you join, and then you can use those files to build without having to pay for them. There are other paid sites where you can go to and get files, so it just depends on what you're comfortable with and what you've used. But what's nice nowadays is that a lot of these build forums have a really tight online community, so you can talk with builders all over the place. Like if you're in the middle of a build and you can't get something to work and you're sure somebody probably has the answer to the question, like, what the heck does this thing go to? I just printed 4 of them and I have no idea where they go. Because sometimes the documentation isn't necessarily as perfect as you like, but there's some great stuff.
I apologize, I'll also say, on printables, a lot of companies are actually posting up replacement files for parts. So I believe Skoda and Volvo are working with them now for replacement parts. And for those of you who live in the Anaheim, Irvine area, Micro Center works with them.
Okay. But let's say you have something so revolutionary that you can't find a file for it, and you're gonna have to make your own. That is also possible.
So some of you were here for the Blender. How many of you were here for the Blender panel before? Excellent. Blender is awesome. It is amazing for doing sculpting style work. They do have CAD plugins now. I'm a big fan of Fusion 360 and FreeCAD. They tend to have a lot of tutorials for them online. There is Learn Fusion 360 in 30 days on YouTube. Highly recommend it. Of note, everything you see on the screen here is free or has a free version.
Yes, including Fusion 360. You kind of have to hunt for it, but they do have a hobbyist.
If you Google the hobbyist version,
yes,
you will find it.
And yes, that's where things get a little bit more technical. Not everybody's, usually got that particular knowledge skill, in mind. How many people here create their own files? Well, see, there are many fewer hands now. And that's when you sometimes like, oh, I have to make a friend, or maybe you can pay someone to do a file for you. Like I'm actually working with an artist right now, and through Adobe Illustrator, you can actually create STL files. So even though you're like, well, that's an artist program, what are you talking about? And I'm like, well, yeah, because I'm gonna have some artwork on some files, but I'm gonna print it, it's gonna be glorious. So, but it causes you to think out of the box. And it's nice having the community to bounce those questions off of, to find out, hey, does somebody know where I can find this particular thing? Which is nice. All right. And so this is what we were talking about, where he was saying, how can I print if I don't own a printer? And recently in San Diego, which is where Matt and I are from, the San Diego Public Library System has these things called the Idea Labs. And these printers that you see here in this image are all located at the downtown library in San Diego. And they are all free to use for the public, with of course certain caveats, right? Like you can't go in and be like, hey, I want you to print me this 20-hour helmet. Don't think people have asked that. But they actually have an online system where you can submit a file that's like a 3 or 4 hour print file, and then when you look up these files and then you slice them, you can kind of see like, okay, how long is this going to take to print? And they will print them for free, and you can go down and pick them up for free. And so when some people were like, what? I can get free 3D printed stuff? Oh my goodness. So I would definitely look into your own public library system, or if you're at college and university, I'm sure you've probably got a maker lab that you're attached to. Maker spaces and other batch printing. Talk to us now.
Anyone here go to UCSD? You work there. Have you been to their lab yet? Okay, you've seen what they have. Oh man, they have an Excel.
Oh.
Yeah, of course they do. Yeah, so a lot of your college campuses, universities, libraries, they all have these resources. Everyone there is super nice. Just don't go, I heard the one at UCSD had to get a little bit grumpy because everyone's like, oh, I want to print this thing, and they're like, this is going to take 5 days. They're like, we can't do this. Split it up, use it, here's the slicer, use the slicer to split it up into different pieces, and you can submit the files individually, and we can print it that way. We are not tying up this machine for 5 days straight. That's just,
That's when you buy your own printer.
that's when you start looking at buying your own printer at that point there. But the, a lot of makers, you know, like who had a printer here again? Oh my goodness, I love you guys. So those are all your friends now? So they are people that you can go and say, hey, you know, my name is Matt, and I'd really like it if you would print something for me pretty please, with sugar on top, is that okay? And most people are really nice when you do that. If you like approach, like, hey, you know, I have this idea, I want to print it out, I'm willing to pay for the material, I'm willing to pay for the time. You know, and most folks are like, yeah, sure, we'll totally do that. So don't be afraid to like make friends and ask them about it. You know, ask them, because you know, again, it can add up very quickly, much faster than you expect in some cases. And like we said, there's companies like Materialize and Shapeways that will absolutely print stuff for you professionally. The nice thing about those companies is, let's say you think of like the next great idea, and you don't want to share it with anyone else. These are companies that respect an NDA. They will not share your project with anyone else. They treat it as you are prototyping using our services. We won't tell anyone what you're doing.
Thanks. Yeah, awesome. Very cool. Okay, so of course, people who have 3D printers, I'm sure everybody has heard this question from their friends. Well, then which printer should I get? Right? How many people have heard that question from their friends? Like, what? What? You're gonna tell me what printer to get? Oh, yes, all the time.
When is the best 3D printer?
Right. And now Matt and I obviously have our own opinions of how that should go, but we're not here for what printers we like best. But we want to go through the process of how best to decide for yourself if you're in the market for getting a printer, right? So you need to know what you mostly want to do with it. You know what I mean? Like, I want to print helmets. Well, helmets are a particular size and shape and need, you know, if you want to do them all in one piece, that's obviously going to kind of dictate what kind of size of printer you want. You know, what you want to do. Are you willing to cut it up into little pieces and glue and Bondo and sand and glue and Bondo and sand for the rest of your life? Not the rest of your life, but a long time to make it all pretty. That's also an option, you know, because sometimes you just don't know how much space you're going to have to be able to put those things in there.
Yeah.
I want to put a whole dome of an R2-D2 on a printer. It can be done. 500 millimeters by 500 millimeter beds do exist. But that's one of those 7-day print jobs.
Yeah, and then you have to figure out where you're going to put them.
That's right. So one of the other things you need to know is how to operate your printer. How much work do you want to go into? And Matt, since you've owned so many printers.
So I've tried to recommend printers various ways, and my biggest one is this, especially for those of you who own one, the first question you should ask when someone says like, what printer should I get? The first question you should ask yourself is, how much help do I want to be able, how much help am I able to provide? And Currently, there's like 3 or 4 manufacturers that have 24/7 technical support, like real technical support, where you can actually contact them, ask them questions, and they're there for you. And I always recommend going for one of those companies first, for the simple fact that your friend might just get sick of it. You know, you 2 a.m. an issue happens, you contact your buddy, and they're just like, no, we're done. They'll just cut you off. And so that's a big thing for me, is being able to know that someone will be there at my back. Reliability of the machine is always important, of course. Unfortunately, reliability and cost tend to be at other ends of the scale. You can have one, you can have the other. You really can't have both without spending a lot of money. Ease of use of replacement parts. I'm a big fan of open source. I like to be able to, if anyone recognizes this at all here, these machines, when you build them, I have my choice stock of choosing 7 different hot ends to choose from. Just by their very design, I could be like, okay, I want to use this one this time.
He likes to customize his machines.
Yeah.
And like name them and give them pretty colors. Yes, he has many to keep track of them, as his dear girlfriend will tell you.
But
because of answering those other questions, it's gonna lead you to kind of the price of what you're gonna wanna pay then for that printer. You know what I mean? If you love to do miniature gaming fans in the house, right? You're gonna want a resin printer because you want the detail on those fine, tiny models, and you will be able to print armies and armies and armies of all the figures in the world. And that's amazing, and that's exactly what you want. But filament printing, they don't look quite so nice. It's not gonna give you the level of detail that you want. So you already know kind of inherently where you're gonna go with that. So.
And the trap with resin is, so with filament printing, mentally you're always trying to aim for like the biggest possible printer you can get. You don't actually want to do that with resin. With resin, you want to get a printer as big as you're going to use. Because the bigger the resin printer, the more resin initially you have to feed into it to get it working. And the screen is a consumable. So the bigger printers have screens that cost hundreds of dollars to replace, and sometimes have as little as maybe 500 hours worth of print life before they start showing age. And while that sounds like a lot, you rack that up really quickly, especially if things go wrong. And when things go wrong, it's not an if, it's always a when.
And so we were talking about, like I said, slicing software, and what that process is. Like I said, literally we'll take an object and it turns it into slice by slice by slice by slice. And I can definitely tell you, my brother just took home one of my 3D printers, and he had never printed before. And now I know what Matt went through when I kept calling him, going, wait, okay, I want to print this thing, and it's not orienting the right way. It has these crazy overhangs, and I'm getting all these error codes.
24/7
And again, or going through services that have a lot of YouTube videos, have a lot of online resources. Depending on how you learn, obviously, everybody has different comfort levels. Whether you want to have a person be that person next to you helping you, or can you do it online, or can you take classes for it? And we are at a point where you can do, choices. We have all the choices.
You can absolutely get a degree in 3D printing. It's a thing.
Yes. All right, so as an arts and a science, we have to forewarn you, because you'd like to think if you do everything and calibrate everything perfectly, everything's gonna print perfectly, and you come back and it's not perfect.
Oh yeah, we're all victims of physics. You can do everything perfectly, something can go wrong, but it's very much especially with all these materials, it's very much like, okay, I'm gonna choose this material. What are the, pros and cons of using, like I've got this material right here that we'll talk about later, and this one.
And that's a 1 kilogram roll spool. So when you're looking at buying filament, that's typically the type of quantity, a full roll of that be 1 kilogram.
Would be about a kilogram there.
Yep.
But there's also sometimes an element of like voodoo, where you're trying to figure out what's going on, and you're just like sitting there like, okay, well, this works really well, so long as I'm not watching it, so I'm gonna close the door. And lo and behold, you find out later on that the reason that worked is it kept the breeze from going into the room, even the slightest breeze going into that room, that keeps the print from delaminating and warping off the build plate, or the temperature on the resin chamber from dropping.
Right. And like I said, the community for 3D printing nowadays is just glorious. You guys are in the golden age, as they say, of getting involved in this particular hobby. Because really, there's never been a better time where you can't get online. The joint building panel that was just going on just a little while ago. Some of the gentlemen that were in that panel when I got my printer, they were like, oh, you got printers. Okay, well, hey, go to these online resources. Do you want to start 3D printing droids? And it's been many, many droids later, and you're just downhill since. You're like, oh, starting this project and that project. And then there's always updates. There's always something new. And you always have to stay on top of that. You know, make sure everything that you're doing is the latest and greatest, which is wonderful too. But as we were saying, never tell me the odds about things failing, because they do, frequently. And as you can see, the spaghetti monster is going to get you. There is no one who has not met the spaghetti monster. And I actually have some samples of what that really looks like in real life. I'm happy to hand out, and pass around at the end of the presentation.
We can always make more.
Oh, definitely make more.
Stopped a few of those.
And then Matt put this list together of like a few of the common failures. Mind you, this is not even like a complete list.
We're not even talking about resin, we're not talking about SLS, we're not talking about all the really... Resin failures are horrific because they're always messy. And it's never a happy mess, it's always a bad mess. I saw one the other day where there's a little piece of thin plastic between the build tray for resin, the tank, and that little piece of plastic keeps the resin in. Someone got a little too aggressive when they removed their last plate, or the last build, and cleaning it, and they poked a little hole in it. It came down, oh no, wait till you hear this, this is amazing. I should have saved a photo of this. It came down, the part they put on there created a sealing surface with the plastic, so as it came back up, it pulled on the FEP even more and just kept making a bigger and bigger hole until all the resin drained out.
Oh, sad.
Because we were trying to figure out what happened, because we saw this weird hole in the middle, like there's no way you would miss a big hole like that, and then they showed us.
It didn't start big.
It didn't start big, and they showed us the model, and the model was basically like completely flat like this, so it was just going each time.
Yes, it's horrible. And so that's why, like, if things like that, you're like, I'm gonna have to deal with the possibility of all of these failures, daunts you now. Oh, just wait till you get it home. It's definitely going to happen to you. And like I said, do you have the patience? Is that something that you want to deal with yourself? To have to suddenly go through all these possibilities because something's not working right, and you need to get it recalibrated so it's printing properly? Or you're gonna throw it out the window and say, I hate 3D printing, get hell with this, I'm never doing this again.
Defenestration.
Or
Yeah.
excuse to buy a new printer.
Which,
Which, depending where we all go.
N+1, I told you, N+1. That's the equation for the number of printers you need to own. And equaling the number of printers you currently own.
My fiance doesn't need to hear that, but in the grand scheme of things. So we found a video that we wanted to share part of about the power of 3D printing. And this is just 10 years old to kind of give you a idea of how it goes. What it goes.
It worked really.
I know.
It was great.
Oh, it's thinking about it. I don't know what the quality will be.
No whammy, no whammy, no whammy.
I think it's still tough.
Offer
Yep.
something that traditional approaches didn't have a solution for. Our lead sculptors embraced that kind of technology, and they used their artistic skills with a different tool set.
Once you take a practical approach to your digital sculpture, you start to find there are more similarities than not. Today, there really isn't any difference other than the tactile part of it.
Basically, you get the raw sculpture handed to you. It still requires the same finesse and the same artistic skills with model makers and artists to take it to a finished level. In the business that we're in, we're always going to need duplicates. We're going to need a soft version. We're going to need a stuck version. So if we're going to do 150 suits of armor, we're going to print one. We're going to make it really nice, do all our artwork to it, then we're going to mold it. And then you can control the material that we're running it in and how many that we need.
We're at the starting point for this asset that's going to be final for physical and the visual effects portions of the film.
When working visually, you really don't have a sense of true perspective. one of the things that we like to do a lot is we'll make maquettes of the suit or character that we're making, and they use that as on-set reference for lighting and texturing and whatnot. That reference is propagated to visual effects to overall make a much better product in the end.
Our whole industry, from when it began with Dick Smith back in his lab, is an industry founded on stealing and borrowing other techniques and other processes from other industries and applying them to this industry. When we needed to make fake teeth for Interview with the Vampire, we went to dentists, like what materials do you use? And fake eyes, we went to oculars. What kind of resin? What do you use? We looked at prosthesis. And the same thing with fake skins. We went to the medical industry. We grow together when we share information.
We work with people that work in aerospace, that work in sport, that work in medical. We even have access to people that are R&Ding different materials and where material research is going.
We have to come up with solutions in days. And most industry moves slowly.
There are a lot of things that we do here at Legacy that's a tremendous amount of knowledge to someone that's on the outside.
It's kind of like open source. Everyone gets to learn from everyone else's successes and failures.
It's fantastic, I think. It's just like, what could the ceiling be on this thing? We haven't seen it yet.
So, Legacy Effects took over for Stan Winston. When Winston suddenly passed away, a lot of his people that were in his company got together and they created Legacy Effects. And last year I happened to be in New Zealand and got to tour what a workshop and meet up with Sir Richard Taylor. And you know, obviously I have 3D printed now. I'm all excited. I have heard 3D printing is now, you know, something that they use for those effects. And he confirmed it. He said as soon as they, you know, filmed all the movies and Weta Workshop was broken away from Weta Digital, first things that they went out and did was they bought a bunch of 3D printers. And they actually have a 3D printer now. But when you see some of the eyes and some of the prosthetics, you know, that they do, they have a 3D printer that is like super top secret that literally does eyes that look exactly like human, that they can customize in whatever way for monsters they do. And it was just incredible to hear that right now it's still something that is being done. Because you saw like Iron Man suits downstairs, right? I mean, when I was talking to the guys, I mean, when they're walking around, it sounds like marching Tupperware. You know, our stormtroopers have a similar issue. And I'm like, hey, did you 3D print that? And they're like, oh yeah. Because sometimes, you know, they had to fit the parts and fit their bodies too, right? How else can you customize? The customization possibilities with 3D printing is really amazing. Takes it to the next level.
Absolutely.
This is all Matt.
It's true. All of it's true. It is very much like owning a pet. The printers have all gotten faster, but they can still run for tens of hours, days. I think on a good printer, an R5 dome usually takes 5 days to do. An entire dome, when I asked Jeff about it. But yeah, the first thing you'll notice when you get a 3D printer, you get it all set up, you're gonna watch it. You're gonna be hypnotized by it. You're gonna be like, oh, look at that go. And then you use something that's dangerous like this filament over here, and it just adds to it even more there. I still have another spool, don't you worry. Danger spool, danger material right here.
Describe it.
We'll get there.
We'll get there in a second, okay? You end up buying a variety of little tools and toys, both to make the printer happier and to make you happier. Everyone buys tons of lights, cameras. I've got a plethora of build plates for mine, spool holders, bearings. You will find that the number of ball bearings and bearings in general that you buy once you get a printer will just suddenly appear overnight. You'll suddenly have like a stack, tubes of like skateboard bearings. Just accept that it's gonna happen. That said, you know, when you start it up, you go to work, you come back, and whoa, you got something there waiting for you. Although that something could also be a terrible mess as well, which brings you much sadness. And again,
Hence the presents. They, you know, just like your pets leave you presents. Sometimes they're good presents, sometimes they're not so good presents in the grand scheme of things. Accessories though, Matt definitely likes the excuse of, I can buy accessories for my printer, just like I buy toys for my cat, yay! So it might be more than just the cost of the printer. And like we already discussed, nasty messes.
Nasty messes. And unfortunately, but like with all pets, you have one pet, you suddenly realize the thing better than one pet is having two. Say I'm wrong, 2 cats is amazing, 2 dogs is amazing, 2 goldfish is amazing. It's all.
So how many printers do you currently have, Matt? Come on, confess.
Oh, I'm curious
I
now.
know.
I currently own 11 with about 4 of them lent out right now.
Which is a total of?
11 is the number that I currently own. 11.
I'm gonna go with 11. because
11.
I don't wanna do math.
But 4 of them are currently lent out. One is probably gonna get donated, 1 or 2 are gonna get donated by the end of the month. And I have plans of probably replacing 1 or 2 with another one, so. But removing 2, bringing in 1, the number's going down.
Or no. Or no. And so we are now getting close to our brief materials overview, because Matt did bring some materials that he wanted to share with you. Because instead, even though, we talked about filament printing, the list is very long of all the types of things that you can print with. All right, straight up though, if you want to print with ABS, you better have it where it's outside or well vented to the outdoors, because it's toxic. Yeah, it's not something you want to be in your kitchen with when it is printing. And it is best that it is an enclosure. So because it does not like, as he was saying, the weird breezes coming through the hallway doing odd things to your print. But certain other things like PLA, PETG, TPU, there's a lot of other things that you can print with that are perfectly safe. They may have the odd smell, but not danger smell.
Well, I will show you this one. This one is we're going to talk about this right here. This is a PLA. This one is particularly dangerous though, and I'm going to show you why.
Okay, that's crazy. They actually put that in there.
No, when it cooks,
It smells.
It smells.
So what he's showing to me is made with 100% real pumpkin spice. Because that's the additive you wanted in your PLA to make your house smell like pumpkin pie during the holidays.
Don't hate. My office smells amazing when he uses
That's yours,
that.
by the way. That's your gift.
Oh, wow.
The
Here you said it was dangerous. I thought it was going to catch on fire.
No,
Well,
it smells amazing.
It's dangerous because it smells so good, and then when it stops, when you run out of the material, guess what you're gonna do? You're gonna go buy more.
But show them the cool TPU stuff you got.
So TPU is, I don't know the acronym right offhand, I apologize, but it's essentially a synthetic rubber. You read it, Suzanne over here actually asked me earlier about it. There is no rubber. I would still ask if you're buying from a non-European supplier, just to confirm it. But from what I've been asking from other people, there is no rubber. So if you want a synthetic rubber that isn't rubber, because if you've got a rubber allergy.
Show them how bendy. Bendy. Because you want to make it bendy. Your children want to beat each other with this. Oh, okay, well, nobody's going to quite put their arm out with it. Or, you want to launch it out of your R2 unit and hopefully, not knock anybody out. That's actually why he created that one, actually.
This is a unique TPU that has been around for half a decade. No one talks about it because it changes. You can change how flexible it is and how light it is just by changing your print temperature and how hard you're feeding material into it. So you don't have to, because the problem with rubber, sorry, I apologize.
That's no, that's fine.
So the problem with rubber printing is that the softer you go, the more difficult it gets to print it out. Because there are some rubbers that are just like koosh ball material. They're really spongy, they're great, again, fun to throw at people.
But it's like trying to, weave spaghetti through the hot end of your machine. You're like, how do I get spaghetti to actually, get enough gravity to go down through and bleed through and print my thing? It is a challenge to work with.
I've got, so the mouse tray right over here is actually made of 4 materials. It is made of, so the wheels are actually hard printed rubber. This is a 95A. The main body is made of PETG. The top parts here, the greebles, the little antennas, are made of PCTG. It's kind of like polycarbonate and PETG mixed together is the best way I can describe it. I don't like to describe it that way because that makes it sound like I just took 2 materials and slapped them together. It's a weird chemical blend that just gives you both properties. And the little panels on the side there are made of an ABS. That can, while I won't recommend printing in open air for the fumes, it does not warp nearly as easily as other ABS materials with very minimal loss of heat
Yes.
issues. It doesn't warp easily, basically.
And given that we all live in Southern California and we've had some of the hottest summers that we could ever remember, and as they all say, don't leave your pet in the car, Well, don't leave your prints in the car, depending on what you printed them out of. Because, PLA is the most common material and it's something we all use, and you've probably printed something out with it, but if you leave it in your car on a hot day and you come back to it later, it's going to be very deformed and in other shapes than when you originally left it in. And, sadly, in the very beginning of droid building, PLA is what everybody thought, because they hadn't tested it enough to realize, oh my God, it's gonna melt in a hot car. Which is why the Europeans are all like, ha ha ha, we don't have such issues. We can use it all day long. And then they've been having heat waves. And then they're like, oh, we don't have air conditioning, how's this gonna work? So PETG is an excellent substitute material for Southern California if you wanna print something and leave it in the car. So my IG also is completely printed out of PETG. So I can leave it in the car, theoretically, it will still be there when I get back. So we are now, you ready to take some questions?
We can take some questions, yes, absolutely, yes.
I have two.
You can only ask one.
One.
Well, no, you can start with one and then we'll come back
One is
to
very
you.
short, hopefully, and the other one is an actual problem I'm facing. Do you recycle? I mean, I see videos all the time of people recycling waste material, your spaghetti and such.
Yes.
Is that a real thing that is worthwhile doing to, get some re-extruding?
You want me to, because you're going to get real technical. The easy answer is no. Because remember, you spend a lot of money on your printer, right? And I want to put as perfect a thing back into that printer so it prints as perfectly on the way out. Because we don't have the technology to really, like I said, melt it all back together, make sure it's exactly as fine as the stuff that we're buying, from reputable, filament dealers necessarily. So it is an idea that's wonderful in nature, but it's not necessarily as easy as it sounds to do. Especially if you need colors, too. I mean, now there's like every color under the sun that you can find with some of that.
What do you think of that stuff comfortable?
Oh, it's beautiful.
Oh my gosh, right?
So, all such things. So before we get to your very technical question, which I know you've had, do you have any other questions in the room? All right, yes.
I just wanted to say that it's impurities, that's the main thing when you recycle it.
Yes, that is without getting too technical, that is the biggest issue, is that, especially since you'll see materials that have the word plus after it, that basically makes the material absolutely impossible to recycle effectively. Because that plus symbol, all that plus, I was gonna actually add that.
Yeah.
So you'll still think it's like PLA plus, PET plus, ABS plus. That plus does not mean, plus does not necessarily mean it is a better material. All that plus actually means is this, is that the manufacturer has added a material that is non-like to the formula, that exceeds the normal thresholds allowed for it. Typically it's something that's stabilizing. It's not a new thing, we've been doing it for decades. The problem is it varies manufacturer to manufacturer, material to material, and there's no industry standard for it. If I borrow that for a second here, I'm gonna turn this material into PLA Plus right now for you. You guys ready for this? You're a good material, you're going to a new home, it's gonna take great care of you, make all sorts of cool things, and make Kevin happy because the house is gonna smell great. This material has now had love added to it.
It is an additive.
It is
Added something to
additive. It is outside the normal spec of the material.
And you don't always know what that is. Like you said, most of the time it's good, sometimes it's bad. PLA Plus is used by a lot of the UK droid builders now because they wanted something a little bit more stable than just straight PLA. But, it's always best to, high quality in is usually higher quality out, is what we have sadly used. Because I had somebody try to give me like $6 filament. Hey, I got this for $6. Isn't this awesome? And then you stick it in your printer and you're like, oh, no, that's spaghetti material. I'm putting that back out for recycle. So, yeah.
For the more engineering quality materials, usually request a data sheet. So those panels on the side of the mouse droid there, that is ABS Plus, but I have the full tech sheet. It's 80% pure virgin ABS, and the other 20% is PETG mixed in, which acts as a stabilizer and helps it stick to the build plate.
But as you know, Matt is very technical and he's going to ask for that tech sheet.
Yeah, I will always ask for the tech sheet.
Okay. All right, we are on to our last question, but don't worry, you can see Matt right after this for your technical one. Yes, sir.
Is anybody working down at the G-code level to actually control the tool path of the filament?
Yes. The short answer is yes. the, you can actually do that in the slicer itself there. You can actually tell it, hey, you know, I want, because you can actually give it commands at the very beginning or the very end to do different things at the very end of the print there. I saw someone recently use an M300 command, which is like a startup command, to sing Funky Town on their computer, or on their printer. It was not a good, it wore it out, but it was cool to see.
But like they're changing the toolpath, like if there's something you're printing, it makes sense to print one part of it first, you know, before another part of it. Yeah, I figured that's probably where you're
No,
looking at.
you're looking
For
to go
economies of printing.
You're looking to go to like down to like the individual line by line.
I'm looking for like, to do like baskets of filaments, stuff that's not necessarily you need a 3D model, but that you wanna have holographic control over each path.
Oh, okay.
Are you gonna have a quick answer? Or do you need to
Three.
say that?
If you get a actually, I have a good example for someone to look this up on. If you Google 3D printing bunny, she's the person you see doing all the who helped pioneer that really neat technique of seeing the individual threaded parts there. She typically will draw a single line in the program and then print it in draft mode. The idea being that draft mode will actually cool the material down more quickly.
Now is 3D printing funny?
3D printing bunny. As for individually controlling the G code, I saw something recently about that. It's super high level. It is not, do you do any I'm not trying to, do you do any machining or CNC work yourself?
No, I don't.
You don't? You could probably get it working for you. It's gonna take a while to get it going, because it uses some non-standard G codes there.
And some of the slicers have places where you can add additional
Yeah.
code to what it is that you're slicing. You know, if you wanted to make modifications to a file that you purchased already. You know, especially we've been playing with Prusa Slicer a lot recently. You know, that's now having where you can add text and you can add like cut a piece into multiple pieces and then actually add peg holes so you can realign them and everything goes back together after you've cut it. Which is like, oh, this is so much more helpful than me trying to perfectly exactly just take two cut edges and match them up perfectly. If your printer can't, you know, print a whole piece all at one time.
Absolutely.
But for those of you that ask questions, we do have some parting gifts. I 3D printed some, you know, dragon eggs that unscrew, and they're up here in the front, so if you'd like to come up and get it. Our kind programming people have let us know that it is time to wrap up, and we appreciate all of you, but if you have any questions, you can come and join us outside in the hall. And we